Welcome everybody. Does sound work? Sound work? Alright. Give it a minute and see if anyone shows up. Tony's here. Shady's here. Hello, hello. I adjusted the resolution of my monitor because I had some feedback on YouTube that it was too small to read. So this should be a little bit bigger and easier to see now. Unfortunately I won't be able to fit as much stuff on the screen, but that's always the trade-off. And I still probably want to, let's see, when the chat starts running, I still probably need to keep this. Oh, you know what? The chat's going to be off the screen now. I think. Where's the chat? Yeah, the chat box is off. Or is it? Oh, slightly. Alright. We have to add a bunch of stuff to the chat so I can see it. Alright, so let's quickly adjust this. I think I can move this box here. No, wait, more. So, that's what I dislike about this, is trying to fit everything on the screen. Yeah, I don't like that. Maybe I just need to get rid of the chat. I feel like it helps in the recording though to see what's being said. Not sure what the happy medium is for that. This needs to really be bigger. The chat needs to be on the screen, and then I just need to not cover that part of my screen like this. That's fair. And then this, same deal. Right there. That looks readable, right? Okay. Awesome. Alright. Enough of that messing around with the stream. Let's keep this over here a little bit. Let's open up Clean Architecture here. And it has an issue that we're looking at. Right here. I'm gonna work on this, which I added 14 days ago, probably during a stream. And so the idea for this is that we want to demonstrate how to use the result package and some of its related filters and things for ASP.NET Core. So let's talk about Clean Architecture briefly, then let's talk about the result package after that to get everybody up to speed if you're new. So Clean Architecture sample here is a project template you can install for Visual Studio, as well as just a Git repo you can download a zip of and use this as a starting point for your application. You can kind of examine it on GitHub using Octatree, this plugin, and you'll see that it has just a handful of projects organized the way you would expect for domain-driven design. Core is going to be where you've got your domain model. So you'll have entities, domain services, specifications if you're using those, aggregates if you're using those, all live in core. You have infrastructure, this is where your data access and other infrastructure things like email would live. Shared kernel, which normally you would pull out into a NuGet package, typically in a real application, but it's packaged up here with this solution, so it has some of these shared base types and things like that. And then your web project, this is your ASP.NET Core app, and it's got a few different examples of how to do things in your web project, whether that's using standard API controllers, or Razor pages, or controllers that use views. So here's your views folder, or using endpoints. You've got your choice. So typically with a real application you would probably delete most of those and you would stick with whatever it is you're building, because you're probably not doing something that uses all four of those. If you're doing APIs, you probably prefer to use endpoints or not. And if you're doing pages, you probably prefer to use Razor pages or views, but probably not both. So when you first create this thing, you'll probably just delete the stuff you don't care about. All right, so it also is meant to include things that are going to be helpful. And so it's got examples of stuff like specification and guard clauses and things of that nature. The one I was adding, because somebody asked for it, is this result package. So what the result package basically does is provide an abstraction for things that you're going to return. And so here's an example of some method that returns a value. That's going to get a customer, or it's going to create a customer. And in both these cases, it returns a customer. But that presupposes only successful operations. What if, for whatever reason, it can't create a customer? Well, your only choice at that point is to throw an exception, or if you don't want to throw an exception, you can return null, and hope the user figures it out. You could also return a null object if you want to use that design pattern. So here's basically in the text it's saying what I just said. What happens in these other cases where maybe you don't want to handle it with an exception. And so that's what result would be good for. I need to update this with an actual example. I'll try and do that perhaps today while we're working on this. But there is a sample here that kind of shows you what it would look like. And so in the sample, there's some services, and one of those services is this person service. Maybe this has it. Yeah, and so you can see here this thing returns back a result of person. And so if everything is happy, then it returns back this success result of person. But if there's a problem, like for instance, it's not valid, and in this case it's actually using a validator, a separate validator to do that. Hey TBD Gamer, how's it going? Then it's going to return back a result.invalid with a list of errors. And so the consumer of this service now has a little more flexibility in terms of what it does. Other ways to do this would be to like use tuples, or if you're using JavaScript, you might return back a set of errors instead of the actual result, and then the caller knows to check that. Or you might have an errors callback rather that you'd probably use. I think it'd be cool if we send a message in success also. Send what kind of message? Shady. What message would you send? Seem like invalid. So invalid, we just send back the result. Or, well, that's kind of probably a bad name here since this is a capital result and this is a validation result. Message with the object. So you'd say person, comma, and then some collection of things to say about it. But I don't know what you would say. In the success path, there's generally nothing else to be said except it worked. But yeah, we could... I don't know what the use case is for that, but if you come up with a use case for it, we can certainly add that. Open an issue and show me what you're talking about. Alright, so this sample is nice. And in here you can then see, if we go look at the samples web project, sample web, there's a couple ways that this gets used. So in this weather forecast feature, there's a weather forecast controller, which is an API endpoint. And here you can see that the actual endpoint is returning a result object. So it's not returning an iAction result, but it's actually returning the result of T that's in this framework. And this filter here will translate that into an action result. And it'll translate it into the appropriate action result for whatever return result we got. So if we look at that, it's defined right here, and it's actually inside the NuGet package now, but it used to be defined right here. And so here it will say if the result is not found, then we're going to return a not found result. And if it's an invalid, then we're going to return the bad request with the model state. Otherwise, if it's an OK, then we'll just return the object. All right, so that happens for you automatically at that point. So Arapel, what exactly are you talking about? Well, I've been leading up to that actually, so I'm assuming you just joined, but we have a clean architecture sample on GitHub. It's right here, it's a good starting point for new ASP.NET Core solutions. And I have this result abstraction type here. It's a NuGet package that you can add to any project, and here's the link to that. And what we're going to do, or what my goal is for today, is to show how to use the result package and some of the conventions that it uses inside of this clean architecture starting point. That's it. That's the tweet. That's what we're doing. There's already a sample inside here that shows how to use it. And I just showed a second ago, like one way that you could use it is with a filter that will actually translate the result directly from your action. So here, this is an action in a controller that is returning this result, and then this filter translates it into an action result. The other way you could do it is with a helper. So if you don't like that and you want to actually return an action result, like this one here returns an action result of weather forecast, there is a toActionResult extension that you can use as a helper that'll do the translation here, so you don't have to use the filter. So those are the two ways you would typically integrate with results from the front end, from the web. But of course you can integrate with it however you want anywhere else in your code where you want to check what the validation errors were or something like that. So it's very unit testable. It's pretty agnostic in terms of how you work with it. Alright, so let's go into Visual Studio. And here's the clean architecture code. Hopefully this is legible now that I've moved windows around and modified the screen resolution and streaming output. This should be bigger than it was in the last few weeks. So I have like a 30-inch monitor and it has a really high resolution, but when I try and stream at that rate, it crunches it down to it's illegible once it gets put on YouTube. So we're trying this to see if it makes it better. Alright, so what I need first off is some place that I want to return a result. There's a couple places where that might happen. I might want to return a result when I go to mark an item complete. Right now that returns a void. Maybe it should return some indicator of success. So that would be one place. Another option would be if I have some service that I can use. And I don't really have a service. I just have this some domain service. So we could create a service to just throw in here that would kind of be used as a demonstrator of how to use result. And I'm on the fence about which one of those makes the most sense. Like my only business logic in the thing right now is this mark complete. Any thoughts from the peanut gallery? Should we come up with a new service just to demonstrate this, or should we mess with this one that's already here? Nothing? Alright. Let's start here. And if we don't like it, we'll rip it out. So let me switch to a there. See, John Calloway agrees. Switch to a new branch, and we'll call it Ardalis.Result. Good. Come here. Tony wants to argue. You're too slow, Tony. Dependencies, we're going to manage NuGet packages to add Ardalis.Result, which I don't think I have as yet. Now I don't want to add ASP.NET Core into my application core project because I don't want to have a dependency on ASP.NET. So we just want this one for now. And it's tiny and it should install fast. Alright, so now in here this could be a result. And I think my result actually, this is if I remember right, a recent issue came up about this. Let's go find our issues of a non-generic result for is it in here? I don't see it. Anyway, since it's a void return, I don't know if I have a result of t that I would return. Right? But let's find out if that's there or not. I may just be misremembering. So can I just return a result standalone or not? Yeah, it wants to have a t. So that makes that tougher. I can make it a result of the whole item, but that's goofy. Yeah, I think I need a T, a type. Could be a result of success, but that's redundant at that point. That might make the decision for us. Maybe we need to do a separate thing that returns something. So let's rip this back out. Let's make that void. I don't need that interface either. Alright, I thought there was an issue for this. I wanted to do that. Did that. Yeah, that's done. I think someone did that. I think Shady might have done that. Unit.value. That would be an option, but I don't want to have to do that. I thought I had an issue for doing it with a non-generic one, but I don't see it. I'm going to add an issue in a sec if I can't find it. So we've got this, and this has that. It has all these things. What does iResult have on it? Can I implement this without having a T? Type wouldn't make sense, would it? Object get value wouldn't really make sense. It doesn't have a value. So maybe I need a separate result that would be a, well, because you could still have validation errors on something that returns void, because the inputs were getting validated. And you could certainly still have errors that occur on something that returns void, and you could have a status, but you wouldn't have these two. So I need a different interface, otherwise I'm breaking that. I don't even know if this interface gets used anywhere though, honestly. Maybe it does. Alright, we'll leave that for another day, but I'm going to add an issue to look into that. I swear someone sent me something about this. Maybe it was just a comment and they didn't add an issue. But we want a non-generic result type. Hey Simon. To support void methods. So this might require a different iResult interface that doesn't have type or value. Should work as a return instead of void. Alright, we'll try that. Alright, so now let's go back here and let's come up with some domain service that we would do that's purely going to be there for demonstrating this. And I think we could try a service that would, like our whole domain is just this to-do item list. So what kind of a service would we use for this, or do we have to add another item and make the whole thing more complex, which I don't want to do. Because let's say there's a service to, I don't know, find items of a certain type or something like that, like a search service. You could probably do that just with a repository or something, but we could wrap that in a service. Maybe it depends on a repository. That would work. So sure, let's do that. Let's do a to-do item search service. Why not? Alright, so give that our name here. No. Like that. Yeah, sure. Okay. And it should probably implement an interface, so let's give it an interface. Now here we're going to use the result, and this result will be a result of to-do item for a single one, and let's make something that just literally gets an item to do. So get next remaining item. Alright, so this will be like if you, it's not really a search per se, it's just getting one thing, but you know, let's say that you don't want to have to look at your whole list of to-do items because it's overwhelming, and you just want to be told what to do next. This thing will do that for you. It'll just give you one thing to do. And then we could also have a search that gives you active ones. So, and we have a specification that already shows you incomplete items. So maybe we would use that. So this will be a result of list of to-do item get all incomplete items. Like that. Neither one of these really needs to take any parameters. If we did, we could give them like a search string, maybe. So let's do that just so we have something to search for. So string search string, let's say. The honeydew service, exactly, John Calloway. That was a comment on my original ticket from the other week. Yeah, okay, Simon, I knew I saw it somewhere. Thank you. Would the other one be get next incomplete items so they are consistent? Yeah, that makes sense. And really, it's like get an incomplete item if we want to make it like random or something, but we'll leave it like this for now. And this could also take the same search string, but this is all just for sample stuff, not for anything we're going to ship to real people. So we'll say this is good enough. And it should build. Alright, so then let's go over here and let's implement this interface. And control dot. Come on, control dot. Do your thing, control dot. There we go. Grab the using statement and implement the interface. Okay. Alright, now this is going to have to use a repository probably. To get all the incomplete items, I already have a specification that does that. And I already have a repository in shared kernel for that, which takes in that specification. So I just need an iRepository in here. So this thing right here takes an iRepository repository, and this implementation of repository is so generic that you don't even have to specify what it is you're getting. So I don't even have to tell it it's a repository of to-do item. Go there, and then down here I could say var incomplete spec equals new incomplete item specification, and then probably need one of those that does the string search too. We'll get to that later. And then we could say var items equals repository.list async of to-do item, which I probably don't need because the specification knows that, but it'll turn gray in a second. And then this takes the incomplete spec. Alright, and then this is gray so I can get rid of it. Now I've got my list of items. I could filter them by the string here, which is not very efficient, but would let us at least use that. But assuming everything is happy, we would just say return result dot success of the items. Right? And this is new result. I always want that to be a extension on result, or static on result. I don't think it is. So is that the interface? That's not right. Result.success, that is a thing, right? Schwammy streams. Don't you need an async task there? Yeah, probably. Because I don't have enough angle brackets in this method signature. But thank you. Because this needs to be in await. And then maybe that fixes what I was running into here. But probably not. I think I'm still just not using this right. What's your problem? Using generic type but it should infer it. Result of to-do item dot, yeah. Can't remember how to use my own package. In result, in my sample, in my core, where I have some service, like the weather, how do I return success? Return new result and just pass it the thing. It just assumes success. Okay, fine. So, return new result, pass it the items. That's all I need. No. You're supposed to infer it. Okay, fine. So that works. Okay, so then get next incomplete item. It's basically the same thing. We'll do this. Do both of these. Actually, yeah. Do both of those. And then I don't know what we're ordering by, but we'll just grab whatever the first one is. This should also be an async task. And I have to add that to the interface as well, I think. Constructor and new result. Thank you. Looks like you got that already. Okay. So then this one I can just do a first or default on the thing. So return new result of to-do item of items dot first or default. Now if the items are empty, I probably want to return a different result. So this will be a good example. So if not items dot any return result dot not found. See, I still have to pass it the type. I guess that's fair in this case. Okay, so that works. Alright, now this is all just inside of our service, inside of our domain, so we could easily unit test the heck out of this. The other thing, I think this search string here probably ought to be required, but let's, since I'm talking about testing, let's go write some tests. So let's come in here, and let's add a new folder for services. And we'll add a new to-do item search service get all incomplete items thing. If you put static factory methods on result that return a new result, would you get generic type inference from the arg then, in addition to avoiding the need to do the new? I am hoping so, I'm not sure. No, next item is not the same, like if it doesn't exist. That's what I'm saying if it doesn't exist. Is that what you're saying, General Undo? No next item is not the same, like if it doesn't exist. Hey, we got a decent crowd of people here. Thank you all for joining. We're playing around with a result abstraction. Yes, not found as different result as no results. Is it? I guess it is, because I'm not looking for a specific thing, but if I'm looking for the next incomplete item, yeah, I don't know, I could go either way. What should I return if I can't return the item? I don't want to return null. The whole point of the result abstraction is that I can return some kind of result that indicates what happened. So, what would it be? Would it be not forbidden? It's not invalid. It could be an error, but I don't know if I want it to be an error. I would return an empty list or just null. Well, you would, because you don't normally use a result abstraction. You would just return an instance of the thing or null, or you'd return a list that may or may not have things in it. But in this case, we're we're using a different abstraction for that, so we have more options. So I think it would be not found, because you're looking for the next incomplete item, and there isn't one. Now, I agree that's a different mental model than what we're used to if we're not using a result abstraction, but just go with it here for argument's sake. And if we don't like it, we'll change it. But to exercise this and to see what this would look like, we're going to write some tests. What does not found return? Where's the implementation? That is actually in the result type. You can see it in the backlog of the chat, but if you joined later, I don't think you can see the backlog of the chat, so I'll paste it in here. There we go. So there's a NuGet package for result that you can find there. Okay, yeah, exactly. Not found is not an error. Get all has an empty list. Shouldn't we return a not found there as well? Possibly. We'll get to that. Let's start writing some tests, and then we'll see. So let's come in here. Let's add a class. And what is this thing called? To do item search service. To do item search service underscore get next incomplete item. Alright, that's my class. And we'll make it public. And then we'll add a fact with whatever we want it to be. So I don't need that. I do need that. So this thing, first thing I want to test is that if there aren't any items, we get not found. All right, let's write that test. So in here, we'll say public void, and this can be async task returns not found given no remaining items. Alright, so we can var, so we're going to need a mock repository, I think. So repo equals new mock I repository, mock repo, no, there, alright. And then we need a service, var service equals new to do item search service there, and that needs the repo. And then we want the repo to return nothing when we ask it for something, but that's the default behavior for a mock. And this needs to be repo.object to get the actual thing. So now that's our range. Our act is just to get a result back. So result equals service dot get next incomplete item right there. And then we just want to assert dot equal, we expect it to be a result dot not found. How does that work? Capital result, which I don't have in here, so we need to add a dependency, manage NuGet packages, go find Ardalis.Result, and there's like an enum or something for these different things defined in there. Alright, so we've got that, close that, and this can be Ardalis.Result result status dot not found of result dot status, maybe? Why does that not match? Task stat. Oh, I need to do a wait. Somebody's probably telling me that. Thought you were using fluent assertions last week. I was using fluent assertions last week. We could use fluent assertions still here. We just haven't gotten there yet. Our result equals a wait on that. Now everything's happy, except for this, because that. And we'll go to that. Alright, that should be a runnable test. Let's find out. It built, and it failed. Why did it fail? Message value cannot be null. The most helpful message ever. Enumerable.any, get next complete item. Alright, so I can't call any on this because this thing actually returns null, not an empty list. That's fair. So let's mock that and have it return a new list. So here we'll say repo dot setup list async it dot is any. Am I passing in anything? I am. I'm passing it the incomplete spec. Alright. It dot is any specification of to do item should work. Dot returns new list of to do item. Okay, we'll put that on its own line. It doesn't know what a list is. What else? Cannot convert from a list of to-do item to a task of to-do item. Alright, how do I do a mock on an async? Isn't there an async returns or something like that? Returns async, there we go. So, returns async. Perfect. Okay. Need to move service line down. Service line down. Summon gearing. Why? I can actually set up the repo after I've already injected it. That's okay. This is still red for some reason. I'm not sure if that's an actual error or just Visual Studio being stupid. It's just Visual Studio being stupid. Alright, why are you red? It's bothering me. But let's run this. I thought the setup was not available if done after call to .object. Nope, it still works. Yep, that's fine. All good. So that passed. Alright, so let's do another test. Our next test is what? We get a net found if there aren't any, otherwise we get the first item. So we need some items. So come back here, copy this. There. And let's get a few test items. Do I have that anywhere already? I have a to-do item builder, I think. Yeah. So if I need some items, I can just use this. So let's say private list of to-do item get test items and var builder equals new to-do item builder. I could use what is it? Shoot, lost the name of it. Not autofact, but what's the automock? It's not called automock. Is it auto? Somebody help me out. What's the thing that automatically does the builder for me? It's auto fixture. That's what I want. I could use auto fixture. But I've already got a builder set up in here, so we'll use this. For some reason that slipped my mind. The fixture part wasn't coming. Alright, so let's say var, let's create a new list. Var items equals new list of to-do item, which I could do that, and say items dot add builder dot with default values dot build there, and we can say item 2 equal builder dot with default values dot ID 2 dot build And just for completeness sake, we'll add an item 3, give it an ID of 3, add item 3, and we'll return items. Now our test here returns first item from list let's say first active item. Alright, so let's make it so that item 1 with default values.build say dot I don't think I have a way to make it not active in this builder. Well, we can mark it complete, can't we? So let's make the first item not complete. So I guess it'll be easiest if I make this 2 lines. Var item 1 equals this guy. And we'll add item 1. Now that's consistent at least. But we're also going to mark it complete, which will set its complete flag. Alright, so now here returns active first item from list. That's going to be the second item. So we're going to expect this is all going to do the same thing. And instead of returning this list, yeah, the specification is not going to do its job. I can't. Right, automock is the automatic mocking from the DI container, and I'm not using a DI container here. Let me see the service again. So I don't think it's the service's job to say whether something's active. It's just delegating that to the spec. So I can't really unit test whether that works, because I'm not actually doing a test of the repository with the specification in this unit test. All I care about is that when this comes back, it has just the things it's supposed to have. So it's not really correct to worry about whether or not it gives me the first active. It's really just it's going to give me the first item from the list. So we'll get rid of this mark complete. We'll say all 3 of them are active or incomplete. All this stuff stays the same. The only difference is instead of coming back with a new list of items, we're going to get the test items. And those test items I will create right here. And that's going to be from get test items. And that will let me say that this result, when I get the next incomplete item, I'm going to say assert.equal test items.first result. And that's not working. Cannot convert from a result of to-do item to a string. Why would this be a string? This should be result dot value. Okay, I still don't know why I was trying to convert to a string. I guess that's because that's the first overload of equal that it found. Alright, but that looks right. So let's run this. And it passes on the first try. Okay, so what else? What else do we need to test? If we look at this search service, we can argue about whether or not it makes sense for this to be a not found. I think I want to test this thing because I want to be able to say that the search string can't be null. And I don't want to throw an exception if it's null, I just want to tell you that it's not valid. So I can say, well, let's write the test first for this one, just because. So let's come down here, get all incomplete items is the name I want. So copy this, change this to get all incomplete items. Which really shouldn't say all in the name. How many years have I been programming? I was writing code in Apple II Basic in the 80s, but I don't think that necessarily counts. But I've had a job as a professional programmer for about 22 years or so a little while. Getting old. Have some gray. Let's see, to do item search and get all incomplete items. So this right here now needs to be changed to, I really think it should just be get, not get all, but get all incomplete items. And that's fine. Let's get rid of this, because I don't need it. Programming for a living since 1999. Yep. I got you beat by 2 years. Alright, so in here, what do we want it to do? I want it to return invalid given null search string. Which we can argue about whether or not that's a valid thing to do. We're just trying to play with the result thing at the moment. So I really don't need mock repository to do anything for this one, because I'm not actually going to call it. So we'll ditch that. I don't think I'm going to need the test items for this, but I'll leave it there for now. And we're going to call get all incomplete items, pass it null, and we're going to expect a result status of invalid on that, and then we're going to expect also some message to come there, I think. Classic ASP with VBScript. That was me, man. That was my first thing I learned too. I had a boot camp at my first job. For a week we learned how to use Visual InterDev. And then like the following week I was at a client, because my first employer was a consultant company. So yeah, good times. Visual InterDev was great compared to the alternatives of the day, you know. Alright, so this should work, by which I mean it should build and it should run and it should fail, because we haven't actually implemented that yet, but that's what TDD is all about. So we're going to do this, we're going to run it, we're going to see it turn red. And why did it turn red? Probably, there, we expected it to be invalid, but it was actually okay. So let's go over here. No, let's go to our to-do item search service. Let's close some other junk we don't need. There's our service. And on this one, we're going to do some validation. And we could use Fluent validation here if we wanted to. I've been programming since 2015, started with JS, PHP, and transitioned to C#. It's a good move. I don't think you see too many people going the other direction. Nobody's going from C# and saying, you know what, I really wish I could just do PHP instead. C#'s not nearly as nice. I've never heard of anyone doing that. Alright, so let's just say if not string dot is null or empty, which is overkill for what we're trying to do, but that's fine. Search string, and then we can create our result type, return new. This is the part I need to get better at. Result dot, no, maybe it's not renew, return. What do we do for, it's the same as not found. Yeah, so it's result of T, of to do item, dot invalid. Now you'll take a list of validation errors, so we could create one of those. In fact, you might require a list of validation errors. So let's do that. Var errors equals new list of validation error. Errors dot add new validation error with hopefully some things I can set here. Identifier equals search string. Actually, better would be name of search string and error message. And severity, I think, defaults to being an error, so we're going to leave severity alone. We added that to our list, and we can now say errors. and it doesn't like that. Cannot convert to-do item to a result of to-do item. Oh, it's a list. That needs to be a list. Alright. Bastian Tengadal. Not sure I'm pronouncing that right. What languages do you code in? Me, if you're asking me, I mostly do C#. I also can do HTML, Java, JavaScript, CSS. CSS and HTML aren't really languages for programming, but you know, and TypeScript. But I'm way, way, way slower at TypeScript than I am at C#. C#'s my main thing I do day to day. That should be better. Bentley, hey Steve, you see my GitHub comment making the method result not found. I think this follows more MS. Yes, I think I agree. I would like to do that. That's part of why I'm playing around with this, is to kind of get more of a feel for how this whole result thing works. So, yes, I agree. John Calloway, continuing to love specifications. Awesome. I think there are more programmers that have to know multiple languages, especially the ones that get outsourced. There are more programmers. I mean, it's hard to be a single language developer these days, unless it's JavaScript. If you're doing web development, that's for sure. Possibly Blazor will change that. You'll have more people that are just pure .NET, but even with Blazor, you have to be able to interact and interop with JavaScript. So, I mean, these days it's like unavoidable to have to know at least enough to be dangerous of JavaScript. Okay, so that built. Let's see if my test succeeds. That's already cool. Failure expected. You're still not working, huh? Why is it returning okay? That's weird. Search string is null. Then we should return invalid. Search string. So, Callaway, do you have any feedback on specifications? How many specifications are you writing in a typical project that you're converting? One or two, or do you have like examples where you have like 50 different specifications that you're using? I'm curious to hear about it. Most of the stuff I'm doing with it is all sample projects. Most of our projects are building using web forms and ext comma net. I'm not sure what ext comma net is. But web forms is definitely still out there. There's some good resources on moving from web forms to Blazor. There's an ebook that just got published on that topic, actually, that you should check out if you're interested. Alright, let me look at my test. Alright, I'm going to debug this. I feel dirty debugging, but I don't see what the issue is. I'm passing it in null. There's no reason that should return an OK. Alright, so here we are. I'm going to step into this. In this tiny little window. I don't know why that's there. Alright. So, step. Is it... Oh, that's why. Huh, alright. There we go. If it is string that is null or empty, then we want to do this. Too easy. Okay, I know XJS. Wasn't sure. XNet is a wrapper for XJS. Got it. Choosing Blazor for greenfield and not looking back. Nice. Few so far. Just fixed a bug due to my understanding of take and pagination. If you want to take a look. Alright, I'll take a look at that. Maybe not right this second, but yeah, I would be interested in that. This actually passed, so that's good. And actually, while we have all our tests passing, let's do a commit. So changes, we added a sample service, returning result, say Ardalis.Result, wrote unit tests for service. Okay, let's commit all the things, and we'll push that up. Hopefully, see if that works. If it doesn't, it'll fail silently because that's what Visual Studio does. But hey, it was successful. Good. Let's add another test to make this thing complete over here. So we want the happy path. And it returns list given search string. Okay, so here's that. We'll pass it in something, and we'll expect this to be success, or okay. I guess okay. Alright. And then interestingly, this one is, should it return a not found or should it return an empty list? That's a good question. General undo, I think, was pushing for consistency purposes. Yeah. But for now, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. I think this will just work. So let's run this test. And it's green. Okay, so that's cool. Simon says he ported his app using Guard and Result to .NET 5 this week, and it all works just fine. That's awesome. Swami says your unit test was correct and just did its job. That's true. Exactly. Found that stupid misplaced not sign. Alright. So let me do another quick commit. I probably should have waited until I had that done, but added happy path unit test. Commit that, sync that. Alright. Now, something fun that I've been contemplating, if anybody has any experience with this, I have a treadmill that I'm walking on that people ask about most weeks. And I was wondering about putting something together on the screen that would show either the actual treadmill speed or something like just a Fitbit API might be easy enough to do. Oh man. So I've got the Fitbit on my wrist, and when I'm typing, it doesn't know that I'm walking. So it's like none of my steps count. But if I actually put it in my pocket, then it picks up the steps. But anyway, I could put on the screen somewhere on the stream an indicator of pace or miles per hour or step count or something like that. Is this going to pick up? It's not updating. There we go. So this is really small down in the corner right now, but here's the steps. Can you see that? Oh shoot, you know what? Nobody told me that the other part of the screen was messed up. Man, I've been off camera this whole time. Not that you guys want to see me, but this is supposed to be right there because I moved everything when I changed the resolution. Anyway, there's the Fitbit. Walking and programming sounds awful. No, it's amazing actually, because you're able to think better and you're not stuck with the horrible posture and crunched over your laptop typing away. Like, you ever go for a walk when you're stuck on a problem and you come back and everything seems easy? While you're on a walk, it's like easier to think about it. So sometimes, yeah, it's harder to focus if you're walking, but no, Callaway, I had to resize my screen because I was realizing that on YouTube, when these things get published, the high resolution was crunched down so far nobody could read it. And when I did, it messed up my my OBS here. So all these things were like off to the side. But now we're better. So anyway, the question that I'm asking is, I wonder if there's a way for me to integrate with the Bluetooth of the treadmill so that if I had a button on my Stream Deck I could tell it to adjust the speed, and also it would show the current speed on the stream somewhere, uh, using like a web source or whatever in OBS. So that's what I'm thinking I might try and do if I get some time to build that. Otherwise, I've got to just take another webcam or something and point at the speedometer on here, which is 1.1 miles per hour. I mean, it's not like I'm running or anything here. That would be harder. But the idea, the fun part would be, while I'm working on code or whatever, folks could be without me even being involved necessarily, folks could add bits to the stream, and it would boost the speed by like half a mile per hour for 5 minutes or something. And so a whole bunch of people could get together at the same time and like all put in speed boosts at the same time, and suddenly I'm here like trying to run and code for 5 minutes, and you guys would get some entertainment value out of that perhaps. So if that's something anybody would be interested in, I can start a GitHub repo and try and build that, which might be an interesting break from some of the more, I want to say useful, but boring projects that I typically am doing. So, but hey, maybe that's not what you're here for, because there's plenty of other streamers that do funny stream games on theirs. So it's popular. You can start a sprint club. Yeah. For programming sprints. It'll be like Scrum. All right. So where are we on time? 1:15. I got 45 minutes left. I do want to take a look at Callaway's thing. In fact, let's just do that right now while I'm thinking of it. So let me go find my browser, and I should be able to click on that link. And it doesn't open in the right browser, but I can fix that maybe here. All right. So Callaway, first rule of Sprint Club is you don't talk about it. Awesome. I think that's Fight Club. Alright, Speaker Meet. I'm not familiar with Speaker Meet. Alright, looks like I've seen this before though. And that looks familiar. Cool. Alright, so you were saying here that you did a query and you specified take to be 4 as a hard-coded item. And this is, what is this? This is skip comma take, right? So you want to just get 4 items every time with this. That's what this is going to do. So this is like saying dot top or select top 4 if it were a database query. And this is kind of the same. Okay. So these will never let you page to another page. I don't know if that's what you want or not. For these to work, what you want to do is pass in the page items into the specification. So I can show you an example of that. If we got the eShop on web, it has pagination in it. What? Somebody put an ad on eShop on web? Wow. I'm so used to hitting that and always just taking the first result. And I literally just did that earlier today, and now this thing's jumping in the way. What the heck is ASP.NET 0? Huh. Somebody's trying to make money off of eShop on web with this ad. I've not seen that before. Anyway. At the end of the day, stream what you enjoy coding. Well, I do some of that, but I also try and kill multiple birds with one stone. So when I'm streaming and I'm doing open source maintenance on projects that I have to maintain anyway, I feel like I'm kind of pulling double duty there, right? Where I'm getting the benefit of streaming and also getting the benefit of getting shit done on the open source stuff. So, but doing stuff that would also be integrated with the whole treadmill stuff could be fun too. So, and I would make that open source, and if other people wanted to do it, they could. So, it would all be still in the same vein of open source software development. Where were we? We're going to show how to use pagination from here. So in the web, on here, there's a home page, index.cshtml, and this thing is what knows about the paging to begin with. So this is the entry point for the home page for the shop. And so here you specify what page ID you're on. This this will be in the query string, because once you start paging, it'll give you new URLs. So it ultimately gets pulled from the query string. That's why it's right here on the onGet, or if you're using controllers and views, it would be on your action method. And then this page ID comes out of the query string, gets set in here. Items per page is a constant. In this case, it's 10. And it just calls catalog viewModel service. So go over here, we're going to find our services, catalog viewModel service. Here, we take in page index items per page, and we pass them in here. So this first item that it needs is going to be how far to skip. If you're on the first page, your page index is 0. Anything times 0 is 0, so items per page times index 0 means we skip nothing. And then this is how many to fetch. Right? This is your take. So we're going to skip 0. We're going to take 10, and that's going to give us the display for the home page. Now, if somebody goes to the next page, then we're going to skip 10 times 1 is 10, and display 10, and we'll get the next 10 items on page 2. So that's how that works if you want to pass it. Is there an easy way to take top 4 or similar? Not built in. I mean, you're doing it right now. That's the easiest way to do it. I just wasn't sure if that's what you meant to do, because it's kind of weird to use pagination for that. Now, we could certainly extend specification to have just take as a thing instead of pagination. It's just nobody's wanted that yet. So if you want that, if that's something that you need, it would be easy to add. It would be literally one line of code plus a property. So, okay, good. Well, sorry for assuming that you maybe weren't doing what you thought you were. So you're good. If you want to have take on specification, just throw an issue on there and we'll add it. There's no downside to that. So GitHub.com Ardalis specification, throw an issue on here, and probably Ficeni or I will knock that out because it'll be trivial. And I'll let you add that if you don't mind. And if you would need skip as well, or if it makes sense to add that too, you can add that as another issue. If you don't need that and you only want take, that's fine too. Twitch heart rate monitor. Ooh, what's that? But it's probably not integrated with Fitbit, right? Because I already got the Fitbit. Although, for it to track my steps, I end up putting the Fitbit in my pocket, and then it doesn't track my heart rate. So maybe I would use a different one. Lucky number 11. He's another one of our live coders. There's nothing here that shows me what this thing does, though. Just did it in the last 2 months. That's good. Pages. Where's your display? Device controller. Oh, you got a Bluetooth listener. Nice. Listen, heart rate. Alright, I wonder what hardware he's using for this. Windows Bluetooth. Is he using Blazor then? Or sorry, SignalR? Yeah, he's using SignalR. What actually renders though? Okay, I wonder how he finds his device. This looks cool. I'm going to star this thing and come back to it. I think that could be helpful. I just need to get with him and figure out what is his device that he's using. Does it work with Fitbit? Do I have to get a different device? And then how is he integrating that? He's probably got it on his Twitch stream, I assume. So I'll check that out. So Simon's saying it's generic Bluetooth. We could add Fitbit. What time do you program or feel most productive? Arapal asks. I don't know. It depends. All day. You know, in the afternoon, a lot of times I have a crash if I've been working all day, so it's better for me to take a break and catch up on email or other stuff. But mornings, I'm usually good after a cup of coffee. Evenings, I'm good until it gets too late and I get tired. Shows heart rate, pulsing heart icon in HTML. Captures that with OBS. Streaming its creation the other month. I will check that out. Let's go find him on his Twitch. Maybe he's got an archive. Videos, racing, other stuff, videos, sort by, filter by, recent, past broadcasts, I guess. Alright, there's heart rate monitor right there. C# view, Bluetooth. Cool. Alright, I'll check that out. When did he do that? Is there a date on this thing? Last month. Alright. Thanks, Simon. I'll check that out. Now the real question is, how do I integrate with this lifespan treadmill with Bluetooth? And what can I do with that? So that'll be another thing to play with. Alright, so that's enough with that topic for now, unless anybody else has any ideas or questions. But like I said, I think that could be cool to give viewers control over the speed of the treadmill. And get me some extra steps that way too. Alright, let's go back now. I'll come to Lucky Slevin later. Specification we took care of. We looked at that. We looked at this. You're doing the right thing, Callaway. We'll add a way to do that directly so you don't have to hack around with paging to do it. What is left for us to do here before we do a pull request? Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Come back to our Visual Studio. We have unit tests. We have, let's see, I don't need this anymore. Other types of results we have are errors, which I didn't show. How can we simulate an error? That's actually really easy to do. Let's simulate an error. So returns invalid, returns the list. That's a sad path, a happy path. Let's do another sad path. So an example of a sad path would be the database didn't work. So returns error given data access exception. Okay, now because we're using mocks, it's really easy for us to mock a data access exception. So in here we can say repo.setup r.listAsync. Let me just steal this code. It's gonna look a lot like that. I hate having to type it all out again. There's that, but instead of returns async, it's going to be more like dot throws async, I guess. New just system exception, database not there. Okay, and what we expect then from that, what we call this, is this to be an error state. Like that. Alright, so that would be something good to do. Let's run that test. It's going to fail. And it does. Now, this is another place where result might be something that we could extend, because currently, in order to get this to work, I'm going to have to add a try-catch. And I don't want to have to add a try-catch everywhere in my system. That's what, in a web app, I typically would like to have a single default error handler that works for this. So this would only be something I would typically really use in a place where I could do something about the error, or maybe I didn't want to use the default error handler, but it is a feature of the result abstraction that I want to at least, play with and see how it works. So let's see what this looks like, and then we'll decide whether we like the end result. So when I call this, it could blow up, and in this case I know it will. And if it does, then I want to return something different than this. But I don't just want to let the exception bubble up. I want to be able to have it just return the result. So this would be, standard try catch block here. And this would go up here. But here, instead of throwing the exception, we would log details here. And we would say return new result of T, of list of to-do item, dot. I feel so weird adding a dot right here. It's okay, it's not letting me do it anyway. Return, because I put new in front of it. Get rid of that. Dot, error. And I can add a list of error messages if I want. And sure, why not? Let's just add the actual exception message. Probably not, again, what I would want to do in real life, but let's do it. I don't know why this is better than an exception, but new come on, figure out what exception is. Alright. And then this part always annoys me. I want to be able to have something here that I can return here. But I can actually just move that return in here, and it should be good. And then the catch block will let me do this. And that should work. Does clean architecture show how to do centralized app logging? Not so much yet. It's probably a good thing I could add to it. I was just thinking that too. Let me catch up. Can you add a filter for that? A filter for the exception? I could. Our pal asks, I'm a big fan of design patterns, spend too much time learning it. Best way to learn is actually building an app. What is a good way to improve C# skills? Reading other people's code, watch videos. Building stuff is definitely the best way. Do code katas if you want something small and simple. Do Project Euler problems. Go download an open source thing and then rip it apart and put it back together again, or extend it in some way. Go to eShop on web and be like, hey, this is cool, but what if we did this? What if I showed you the most popular products in a sidebar? How would I do that? Code it up. There's all kinds of open source projects out there now that there's no shortage of things you can find. Then you just start writing code and extend it. And maybe it's useful, maybe it's not, but you're learning when you're doing that. Simon, by the way, I'm using .NET 5, upgraded new VS Preview, new Git thing which appears to give notifications back from Git operations. Yay! I've got the preview installed here, I'm just not running it by default. Why does the name of the method not contain async in the name, since it's a task? Are we talking about this one? It should. When I first wrote it, it wasn't a task, and then I changed it, but I didn't change that, so that's a good call. I should. Clarify .error. So .error is a feature of result, which is a wrapper around returns that lets you return different things. So error just wraps it with a status code that says it's an error, and then lets you specify what the messages might be. In this case, I'm going to say the message is whatever the exception was. So let me fix the async thing. That's a good call. Because that's actually been biting me when I'm calling this thing, because I'm not thinking of it as async. Right, and then that did it there too. Perfect. Alright, so let me build. Result is a common interface for objects coming out of the service layer, right? That's right. It could be if you were using it, but that's the goal. Yeah, so all these things will return a result of the thing And then instead of throwing exceptions or instead of returning null when it can't find something, they would actually return not found or invalid request or things like that. Alright, so I have a test here which isn't working yet. This is supposed to actually have a value for that to work. So then we can run it. And we should get an error, and we do. Alright, now we can validate as well that the error message is, so assert.equal string expected error message equals this guy. We expected the expected error message to be result dot errors dot first. There. Let's see if this thing still passes. We just made it a little bit better of a test. And it does. Alright, and the invalid one, we can do the same thing. Assert equal, I should probably use fluent validation, or sorry, fluent assertions here at some point. I just haven't upgraded to that for this project yet. And what is this exception called? Search string is required. So I don't have that here like that. Result.validation errors dot first. Except that's not going to work because validation errors. I need to select the thing. Can I do the select afterward? No. Oh, wait, I can do this. Dot error message. There we go. Alright, let's try and run that. And that did not work, because I probably missed a period. Alright. Yeah, need a period at the end. And that probably tells me that right here. Yep. Alright, so now let's run this again. Turn green. Come on. Why are you being so slow? Oh wait, I thought I had it there. What did I do if I didn't do that? There, we go. Alright, now let's try running all the tests and we'll do another commit, and then we can do a pull request and go from there. And then SharkBite's question about logging is a good one, so maybe we'll work on that real quick. Home changes, added error, support to result demo, added more unit tests, good enough, sync, we'll go do a pull request, SharkBite, with your repo pattern, how are you ensuring that each repo referenced in a service are all using the same instance of a DB context? That's done for you by the IOC container, by the DI container. If different repos have different DB context instances for the request, you get weird issues. Yes, you definitely do. I had to do weird stuff in startup to solve this. You shouldn't have to do anything weird, because the default is to register DB context as scoped. Go to my startup here real quick. So in here we do add DB context right there. And if you just do that as the default, then your DB context gets added and its lifetime is scoped. It's equivalent to if I said services dot add scoped of app DB context. Right? It's about the same as that, but with more configuration options. And what scoped means is that it's going to create a new instance of this once for the given request that's coming in. And then after that, any other request for that same thing will use the same instance that it already has. So if you use transient here, then you'll have all kinds of problems. So don't do that. But generally, if you just say add DB context, it'll do the right thing, because it does it for you and it uses scoped when you use that one. If you do singleton here, that's also all kinds of bad. But the other important thing to remember is that not only does your DB context need to be scoped, all your repositories also need to be scoped. So if you mix and match between like a singleton repository with a scoped DB context, then what's going to happen is you're going to create the repository the first time, and it's going to get a DB context from that first request, right? Then that request ends, that DB context goes out of scope, the next request comes in, guess what? It gets the same repository because it's a singleton. But now it's using a DB context that may or not even be there, right? Until it gets garbage collected, it might still be there for a few moments. And then after the GC runs, it's just gone, right? Now you've got a repository that's totally invalid. So this doesn't get mentioned often enough, and it sounds like, based on your comment there, that it might be your issue. But you definitely need to have scoped lifetime matching between not just the DB context, but also everything that uses it, especially your repositories. But remember, everything up the chain that uses one of these things is going to be is going to have an instance sticking around. So where it gets really nasty is if you start using singletons, and anywhere in that object hierarchy, they use a service that uses a repo that uses a DB context, right? Because all of that will get locked into that object hierarchy that's now kept in that singleton lifetime, and that'll blow stuff up. If you use transient, you can run into other relatively minor issues. It really becomes a problem when you use singleton. And yes, that could filter up to services too. But it's the biggest issue is make sure your repositories are scoped and match your DB context. Mediator, is Mediator scoped? I can't remember what Mediator is by default. Wouldn't that cascade all the way to controller? Potentially. Your controllers you don't instantiate, so controllers you don't have to worry about their lifetime. They're going to get created correctly. By default, they don't get created by the DI container anyway. But a lot of times you register controllers as services, and then when you do, they should get created as scoped. I think Mediator might be a singleton. I think it might be a singleton. I don't know if it gets created as scoped. I'm trying to remember. No, it has to be. Mediator scoped. Yeah, Mediator scoped. Alright, so what's in a constructor for your concrete services? Well, let's go look at a concrete service. So I have a service here, and it just takes in a repository. And for this repository abstraction, it's generic, but it's generic at the method level, not generic at the class level. And so I only have to tell it it's a repository. I don't have to tell it it's a repository of some entity, like of to-do item. If I had like 3 different things I was working on in here, I had like to-do items and person and customer and order, I still only need this one repository. You must have save changes on the repo. That's correct. So generally for web applications, I don't find a lot of value in using a unit of work pattern for most of my API things. They look like this. Let's go find an endpoint. You know, here's an update. Right. My pattern usually is go get the thing, go manipulate the thing here, and go update the thing. Right. I don't need a unit of work for that. And if I need to work on a bunch of things that are related, where a unit of work would make sense, they're probably in an aggregate, a DDD aggregate, if you're not familiar with that pattern. And then my repository works on that aggregate, right? In which case that would be go load the aggregate, go work on the aggregate, go save the whole aggregate, right? And so my updates always do a save changes in them because I'm generally building stuff for web and for APIs. They're going to have lots of small granular calls where each call is essentially a unit of work. And that's why I don't generally do a lot of unit of work stuff in here. But you totally could. If that helps you, if you need that, you totally could. But yeah, my repository here is just all these generic methods in this example. Again, you can implement repository a dozen different ways. My implementation of it, and this is all in GitHub, this is just the clean architecture thing. You get all this code for free if you start from here. Is just this EF repository. Has a bunch of query methods, get, list. But then all the things that do actual changes will save changes right in line with the call. Yeah, DDD aggregates are great. I should probably add aggregates to this, but again, this is not meant to be a sample app. It's meant to be a solution template. So everything I add to this just becomes stuff you have to rip out when you try to use it as a solution template. So I hesitate to add too much. But all the same, it does keep growing. Alright, so let's go back to the browser here, where GitHub has detected that I pushed stuff recently. It wasn't 15 minutes ago, was it? 7 minutes ago. Alright. Let's create a pull request. And add result. It's Russian. That fixes some issue. No, I didn't. I control click that. I totally control click that. 118. Alright. Fixes number 118. That one. That's good enough. Maybe need two versions. One is a sample and a minimalist. One is a template. Yeah, that's a lot to maintain, though. You're not wrong. I mean, that's probably the way to go. Hey, General Endu. Thanks for hanging out. Have a nice weekend. Alright. Let's see. The build's going to run. Hopefully that'll pass. It already did. Why is it waiting on this one? And how was that so fast? That's weird that was that fast. Wow. Oh, it succeeded 7 minutes ago when I did a push. That's why. Okay. I'm used to this happening when I start the pull request. Files changed. Let's do a quick review. We added result. Clean that up. Added an interface. Everything ends with async. Don't need that. We added an actual service to show kind of how it works. Have a to-do to add logging. We'll look at that later. And we added tests. Now these tests could be refactored because there's some duplication here, and here, and here. But maybe it's not too bad. So we'll say that's good enough to check in for now. We added result to unit tests. It all looks good. I approve myself. Aw, can't approve your own thing. That's alright. Expecting that. I don't think that's going to happen, guys, because I think that's my old Azure DevOps build. Is that still running? Control click code. Hey, it worked this time. Do I still have... I don't have Azure DevOps running. So I think you're going to be disappointed waiting for that thing to happen. Let's go see if I can turn that off. Branch protection rules. I want to edit. And I really just want it to be this build, but not that one, I think. Alright, let's see what that did. It probably won't affect one that's in flight here. Oh, maybe it did. Alright, good. So that's good to go now. Let's merge it. And boom, delete. Okay, so now we've got 13 minutes left to work on logging maybe. Alright, so note on that stuff, the key is to have one repo per aggregate, not per table. That's right. You can actually lock that down at the repo level if you haven't done it before by using marker interfaces. It works really well, which is another thing I don't think I have in here. So I should probably add aggregate support to clean architecture also to demonstrate that, because why not? That doesn't add a whole lot of stuff. Aggregate support, let's do that. And then what's the other one? Logging, what would we call it? Integrated logging? Application logging? Yeah, let's call it application logging. Do that. Submit. Central app logging, sure. Central. That's worse. Good job, Steve. Central space. There we go. Okay. Aggregates. Let's talk about aggregates real quick, because this is super fast. Notice all these repositories work on any base entity. And that's because we don't know what an aggregate is. If you're going to use aggregates, you really only want to allow them to work on aggregate roots. So at that point, what you would do is you would come down into this guy right here. Let's switch over to master right quick. And then let's pull and hope that it works. And then let's create a new branch for aggregates. Like that. And let's go right here. And we're going to add in the shared kernel another interface. We're going to say public interface aggregate root. And this is a marker interface, by which I mean it doesn't actually have an implementation at all. It doesn't even have an abstraction or anything involved in its definition. So we'll move it to its own type. Now that's a thing. But what it does do is it lets us mark things and say they're aggregates. So we can just say to-do item is an aggregate, and that's probably fine, because anything other than that, if I do, it'll break the world. So we can come into to-do item and say it's a base entity, comma, aggregate root here. And then I can go and modify my repository here. And I can make these things only work on aggregate roots. Now there's probably no reason not to get a list of things that aren't. Well, no, that's bad too. Yeah, I kind of want all these things to have aggregate root, which just gets annoying because I have to copy paste a lot of times, but that is really all I need. I just need to take that and replace, but not just here, because then I could do that SharkBite. I could say base entity is an aggregate root, but that's defeating the purpose of the marker. So I should add that note here. So apply this marker interface only to aggregate root entities. Repositories will only work with aggregate roots, not their children. Alright, now if we added it to base entity, all the children of an aggregate are also base entities. Right, so then it would just let anything work. But now I've got to do the same thing on these. Like this. And this. And this. I wonder why that one didn't have an error. And this. And this. And this. And finally this. Alright, so, but you're right, SharkBite, that would solve the problem faster. Okay, but this now solves the problem, let's say, correctly, or as intended. And what that means is if I can create another type of item, and we'll say, let's say a to-do item has some tasks, right? So it's public class task base entity. And a task, doesn't need anything, but let's just say it has a public string name, get set. Okay, now I can come over here into my item specification. No, that's not what I want. I can come over here into my service to do item search service. And just for, well, task was a stupid name for that thing, wasn't it? Let's see, what should task be? How about chore? Let's name that chore. Okay, we'll call it that. I'm going to throw this code away, so I'm not going to move it to its own file. To do detail, yeah, exactly. So this to-do item has a bunch of chores. But let's say I want to get that list of chores. Well, I could do that right here. I could say chores equal repository dot list async. We'll wait on this. List async of chore, and that works fine, like that. Okay, but this now says what? This says chore can't be used because I can't convert it to an aggregate root. So now the fact that I only want repositories to work with aggregates, specifically aggregate roots, is enforced by the design, and the compiler won't let a programmer accidentally work on the children of an aggregate. So that's a good trick to enforce your aggregate design, by making it so the repository only works with them. Alright, I can clean that up. And that's it for aggregate support. Like, that's literally all you need to do. So come in here, and let's do another pull request with that. Changes, added aggregate support, commit. I could write tests for this, but it's enforced by the compiler, so the tests don't even run if it's not working. So they're the best kind of tests. I thought I synced it. It's still showing there. Push. Current branch does not track a remote branch. Alright, good. There we go. Let's go over here. Aggregate support was 135. Pull request. Aggregate support. Added. Fixes. 135. Create. Boom. And then this needs to finish, and then we'll squash it. As far as logging goes, let's look at what I have. So I think I have some built-in basic logging. But in startup, in program, this create host builder here, right there. So I've got console logging configured, which is not great. I mean, we probably want to add like Serolog or something like that by default. So, as it stands now, I could use a built-in ASP.NET Core iLogger of T. I was working on an iAppLogger interface in shared kernel. Are you talking about in clean architecture, or are you talking about in your app? Sharkbite. Because that's exactly what I would do next. Yes, I would add an iAppLogger in shared kernel. In your app. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I would do. In fact, I might have done that on eShop on Web. I've done it a bunch of times on different things. Let's go back to eShop on Web. See if we get that ad again. Yep. I should click on that just to use up their ad dollars. Let's go down here. And in source, web, program, use users, logger factory, iLogger factory. I guess this is just using the default logging. Did I not create any logger interface in here? I guess not. Source doesn't have a shared kernel, so it would have been in here. Do I have an iLogger? I guess not. Oh, there it is. iAppLogger, I do. Okay. So I have this iAppLogger that I'm using in eShop on Web. So I would do something similar to this in clean architecture, I think. Alright, let's see if our build passed. It did. Confirm. Squash and merge. Good to go. Delete branch. Let's go to live coders. Let's see who's on. Go to Twitch. This is going to be loud. The sound is on by default. And James Montemagno, what are you doing, my friend? WPF. He's not on very often. Let's go hit him up. So, what are the odds I'm going to be able to type that? Montemagno. Oh, copy. It wants to copy too much. Yeah, that's what I want. Old notepad to the rescue. Alright, and then I want to go to my stream manager. And we're going to raid James Montemagno, so get ready for that. We're going to throw that in here. And we're going to hit that. I'm going to start the raid. And I will see you all next week. But come in and say hi to James before you take off if you gotta go. Thanks, Swami Streams. Raid.